it's Florida Gardenista, and in this video we're going to talk about sustaining your worm composting bin. So let's talk about some of the key elements that you want to keep in mind, not only to keep your worms alive, but happy. Because the happier that your worms are, the more that they're going to procreate, the more worms that you have, the more compost that you're going to get quicker. So when it comes to some of the things to keep in mind, or at least the key points that come to my mind, it's going to be temperature, oxygen, moisture, light, and nitrogen, which is going to be that food that you put into your worm composting bin for your worm buddies. So let's start off with temperature, because for us Floridians, we all know it can get hot here in Florida. So why is temperature important? That's because your worm buddies don't like the heat. So when you think about ideal temperatures for your worm composting bin, you want to keep them in temperatures between 40 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So it might not have to be in your bedroom, but it has to be somewhere in a temperature controlled environment. And this is something that I actually find is a big issue for first time worm composters, and that they think that maybe I can put it outside in the shade. Well, it gets hot in the shade in Florida, so you don't want to start off on the wrong foot, especially when you put all this energy into building or sustaining your own worm composting bin. Let's talk about oxygen. So airflow is really important inside your worm composting bin, not only for the decomposition of all the scraps or other materials that you're putting into compost, but also for your worm buddies. So in any type of composting project, as you might know, oxygen is an important part of that process, but worms also need oxygen in order to survive. So if you are building your own worm composting bin, that's why those airflow holes are super important. If you're thinking about building your worm composting bin and don't know where to start, definitely check out my other YouTube video, Do It Yourself, on how to build your own on a shoestring budget. Moisture. So moisture is important inside of your bin. Worms do need it in order to survive, but you don't want it to be so wet inside of there that they're swimming, because you can actually drown your worm buddies, which is not good. But you also don't want them to be thirsty. So finding the happy medium is something that you need to just kind of check out on a weekly basis. Sometimes some of the food scraps that you put in from your kitchen might be more moist than other weeks. So maybe that means you don't need to add some extra moisture in for the next couple weeks. So just evaluating what that looks like inside of there is a good way to go about it. An example that I like to give is a wrung out sponge. So that way it's not dripping wet if you're squeezing that bedding, in order to keep your worm buddies happy. So lighting, if you are building your own worm bin, looking for bins that are dark, or if you're buying one offline, you want to look for one that is dark, because your worms do not like light. And last but not least, nitrogen. Why are we talking about nitrogen? Because that's going to be the scraps that you put into your bin, whether that's your yard waste or your kitchen scraps that you want to put in there that decompose, giving the worms the microbes that they like to munch on, and that's how everything breaks down. I am going to be releasing a vlog very soon that details what you want to put in there, because it is important. Not everything can go into your worm composting bin. Yes, it is great to think about your overall impact on minimizing what you throw into the landfill, but some things are not only bad for the worms in a worm composting bin, but also some things like citrus just don't decompose really well. They don't break down, and so that's not going to help in the whole composting process. So those are some of your top elements that you want to keep in mind for sustaining your worm buddies to keep them happy. If you want to check out some other ideas that I have for worm composting or worming ideas, definitely check out my website, which is floridagardenista.com, or my YouTube channel, which has a couple of different videos of how-tos or ideas that are important when it comes to worm composting. And definitely check out my Facebook and Instagram, which I try to update daily with gardening tips and know-how and fun stuff. And as always, happy gardening.